is Options Trading Concepts Live. My name is Mike. I'm here with Jamal, and today we have a very special guest, Jem Carson from Kai Wealth, CIO and founder. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Good to be here, guys.
Karson, how you doing?
Got a little mashup going.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, man.
My pleasure.
I mean, a lot of our people are always interested in flows. They're always interested in options. And you can talk the gambit, but you are a guy that I feel like are always paying attention to flows, particularly, when you talk about these pits. What are you seeing in flows right now? What are you paying attention to?
So critical in this environment. Similar to 22, when you're in a situation where the world is broadly hedged, the macro is really bad, right? There's a big structural issue. You get kind of what I would call a pain trade. What is a pain trade? You get a trade where everything that people are trying to do to hedge against that macro outcome is not working. And so, what would the pain trade be this year? And we've been calling for this from the beginning of the year, before the Iran stuff even started. It would be equities down, vol down, because people are trying to hedge and not sell their equities, but play for more kind of crass scenarios. Kind of a boil the frog situation where retail gets pulled in, trying to buy every dip, and then keeps losing on those calls that they keep buying, et cetera, right? That environment is really tough. Also, interest rates up, so bonds lose for bigger investors, similar to like what we saw in 22. I think the one difference here, and we'll talk about this later in the show, I think, is precious metals worked incredibly well in 22.
Right.
Before it was the popular trade. And now, that's a place where everybody's also trying to hedge. And it's been holding up okay, all things considered, but I think that also gets probably sucked in the vortex, given that, pain begets pain across allocations and spills over. So the macro is indisputably awful right now, and only going to get worse. But macro doesn't matter until the rubber meets the road, until it turns into supply and demand. And this is why often macro matters over much longer periods of time, and as much as we love to talk about it, why it doesn't play out over shorter periods of time. We knew about COVID in December, early January of 2020.
Yeah, right.
And yet we didn't peak until Feb OPEX. That's the flows at work, right? The option flows necessitated a March risk scenario to unpin risk. These effects that come from this market and vol writ large are critical to outcomes. So how am I seeing it right now? Vol is very well supplied.
Yeah.
People are well prepared. A lot of people I talked to at the biggest of hedge funds knew that last night's conversation was not going to be a good conversation.
It did seem like that, yeah.
It became pretty clear. It even took a while for even last night, as he was saying the things he was saying, for to digest. Yes, ultimately that was really bad information, and going into a Thursday, with a long weekend, it was, that's why he did the conversation, by the way. That's also why they squeezed up on March at the end of the quarter. Right. With knowing that the JP Morgan trade was out there, the hedged equity trade, right?
Speaking of that, do you believe in the idea of like end of the quarter flows and how much that moves?
Do I believe in it? It's literally supply and demand.
Exactly.
It's not about believing. These aren't magical structures. This is supply and demand. That's what drives a market.
Yeah.
Positioning is the one thing you can trust on that is 100% going to play into the distribution. Now, I'll say to that, the administration is now run, like the Fed is run by, the Treasury is run by an ex-hedge fund trader. That is a very different type of, Bassett is a different type of person in that role. They are very much thinking about these things. They understand these dynamics, right?
Yep.
And they are very much trying to support this market, as we're seeing today, with the repeated tweets and the repeated types of positioning in different windows, because they know the macro is bad as well. So given vol positioning, given shorts in the market, what does that create? That creates a push and pull effect, right, with more and more vol compression and a continued stair-step action. Okay?
Yeah.
What I will say that nobody's talking about is that the more and more you get sucked into that vortex, it becomes this pain trade that becomes more and more painful, and which can actually reinforce declines. I'll give you an example. A 2018 February vol-apocalypse. Big decline, but a vol expansion can create a V-bottom.
Yeah.
Same thing with 2020. You get Feb to March, 1 month, COVID collapse. Then you can engineer and turn a market with patch shorts and create a convex move and support.
Yep.
What I don't think the administration is thinking about, even though they're hedge fund guys, is that they are, I think, unintentionally creating a vortex of, no vol expansion means no bottom. It would mean a more prolonged, contracted kind of pain trade.
Stair-Step down.
And so I think we are more and more likely heading into this very, very melt that will come in waves, and that will be low vol, but you'll look back and it'll be more and more difficult for these things to turn. And there are important effects. The more markets go down, the more liquidity generally comes out of the system. $500 trillion of assets, long assets. So the market goes down 10%. That's $50 trillion of liquidity collateral that comes out of the system. It's bigger than the Fed, bigger than the Treasury. So even though they want to control the vol and they don't want things to crash and they're trying to control things for now, I don't think they realize that. I think unintentionally they're creating a bit of a melt scenario that's going to be very hard to turn later when they believe things will get better from a macro perspective.
Well, I mean, when you look at today, right? I mean, we were talking about this 140 handles so far. I mean, for those in the quick math, that's 2%. Big move, right? And it could be crazier, to your point. And so it's like, what area right now, like, and again, we're mostly options centric more than anything. What regions, what sort of tenors are you trading? I mean, some people love to trade near term. Obviously, we know 0DTE is like ruling the roost these days. People love to trade that. Personally, and we've talked about this a lot, like that area right now, I'm pulling back from that as much because that's just kind of a lot harder to trade given this environment, unless you just really want to like gamble, which I don't feel like doing. So where are you trading? Are you trading more near term? Are you trading a few months out? Like, where?
I'm going to take the other side of that trade because, and I'll tell you why.
Which one, near term? Me trading, not trading near term?
Yes, and Vega versus Gamma,
yep.
Right? The reality is the boom, a big part of the boom in 0DTE is because it's easier. You don't have to deal with the implied volatility effects. People in 22 got absolutely hammered on trying to hedge their portfolios with Vega, with implied volatility, as we talked about. Stair-steps down, vol compression, people are hedged. Vega doesn't work. And people look at the VIX and say, oh, VIX is just going sideways, not going anywhere. Vol is collapsing under the hood if you go down and vol staying the same because you're sliding to a higher and higher vol. Skew in the market, right, in the indexes means that down 7% in the market, that a month out, right, we should have been trading on, 2x the vol, right? Or 1.5 times the vol, let's say, sorry. So, you started a 20 vol, you should have been at 30. If you're at a 20, that means you absolutely got destroyed on your implied volatility in your options. And that doesn't mean the realized vol didn't work. You still got the moves in between that you could hedge and make money on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the adoption of 0DTE accelerated dramatically into 22 and out of 22 because hedges didn't work and more institutions and entities started moving to 0DTE because they wanted the more realized, they wanted to bet on outcomes, they wanted to be dynamic, and that's incredibly compelling. That works better in this environment where you get, what did we get today, 80, 90 points, 100 points down, and then 100 points up?
Yeah.
You were trading 0DTE and you did it right. You made a lot of money scalping. How's your Vega doing? Absolutely decimated right now.
I was looking at the 0-day 6600s in the SPX. They were trading for 75 cents, and then they got up to $3,000 today. So massive moves.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing. I mean, nobody saw market going to flat before.
Not true.
No,
not
dude,
true.
You kidding me? No way. You thought for sure market was staying down today after last night.
Well, I think
dropping bombs on them.
But that's why
you're going to obliterate them.
But that's why you got to think about the reflexivity, right? It's always about reflexivity.
For sure.
Right? So people are all short, people are thinking, if everybody thought that and that was conventional wisdom, as a trader, the answer should be, well, this thing could really squeeze if they do a couple things, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, right?
So you would have gone on and bought 0DT.
Definitely long gamma down there. I'll tell you what, we weren't sitting down there.
I agree.
We weren't sitting down there. That was clear.
Yeah.
We were either going to drop 100 more points, which was probably a 20%, 30% chance, or we're going to rally all the way back.
Yeah.
And so again, tons of opportunity playing the distribution on 0DT in these situations, or gamma writ large.
Yeah. I've got to say, elephant in the room, last 4 or 5 weeks, every single time we've come here, the market's been down 80 to 100 points.
Thursdays.
At first, we're like, this is a coincidence. Now we're like, it's definitely us. But today, E-mini's down, like you said. Crude oil is up 11%. Crude oil hasn't really moved. It's fluttered around, still elevated, but the E-minis and NASDAQ have rallied back. What do you make of that dynamic? Because recently, over the last 5-6 days, it's been a complete inverse where crude oil is up, market's down.
So I sat here right behind us with Rick Santelli about a month ago, and I said this year, and I've been saying this to clients, we are going to get all the declines of the year, probably 150% of the declines this year, from Thursday midday till Monday morning. It's going to be, meaning into the weekend, around the weekend. Why? Because when vol is dramatically compressed like it is, and people are hedged, you cannot unpin that until people are worried about some type of risk that they can't hedge. And that weekend risk and the event risk from the macro, right, paired with that risk allows for speculators to short and the macro to creep into the market and for vol to release. And then you open up Monday and that vol compression is back and things are well hedged. We said that, and you better believe, go look at a chart. That same exact midday Thursday till Monday morning has played out 5 weeks in a row. This is would have been week 6. Guess what? Administration also knows these things. They're watching these same things. Okay, if you think it's just a Donald Trump and Bissett sitting in office making decisions, you're wrong. You know, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, massive organizations, AI, these guys, this is a full operation, and they are aware. They're listening to what I'm saying too. Everybody's taking all these things in, believe it or not. So the reality is that they get this too, and they are playing into this effect as well. So you better believe that once it becomes a 5-streak kind of obvious thing, that they're going to, especially going into Iran in the weekend, which we also was a likely thing that we understood. They're going to try and manage that. They're going to try and fight against it. They don't want this thing to collapse and this, with this news. And that's why we're getting the action we are. I mean, if you put those things together, you draw a distribution, this is what you get.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's wild that we are literally here a year later after a big drop, Liberation Day, right? Like literally a year ago. And obviously a lot that's going on right now pertains to obviously what's going on with oil, but we've seen huge moves in bonds. And I know you got some thoughts on that. What have you seen recently?
Yeah, I have a very secular view. And by the way, when interest rates were 0 in 2021, I was screaming from the rooftops that we're going to 5 in a matter of years. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy, okay? I'm telling you right now, in the next 3 years, we're going to 7.5, 8. Okay, in the 10-year.
Okay,
and when that becomes in this bigger cycle, whenever the world starts not believing in that reality anymore, that bigger structural reality, is when you want to be levered to that trade. The steepener has been an incredible trade. It will continue to be an incredible trade. The administration's fighting it because they have to. Because why are they fighting it? Because quite simply, when equities are yielding an equity yield of 4% annualized, and the 10-year goes to 5, right? They got a problem. That means equities are going to come to dramatic pressure, draws dramatic liquidity from institutions, and given the private equity and the private credit and the leverage in the system, that's a major problem. So that they have a problem there. But guess what? The flows are the flows. The supply-demand imbalance there is huge, and there's only so much they can do. Inflation at the end of the day is not controllable by the Fed. The Fed cannot control inflation without raising interest rates, and so they are. The Fed is in a box.
Yes.
And the reason I want to be clear, Iran is happening is a much bigger structural thing. We call for increasing geopolitical conflict, increasing protection. These are all driven by inequality and populism and the need for for more fiscal spending to rebalance or politically, and this is global, and the protectionism that comes with that. That leads to all these things. We've seen this in other bigger macro cycles, 60s and 70s, 30s and 40s, and these generally lead to bigger structural problems. Global conflict should be, again, we expected it secularly for the next 10, 15 years before Russia, Ukraine, before Iran. This is really a conflict with China. It is a closing of our borders from trade, which we've been doing for 40 years. And when you do that, that's not going to be okay with the other, with the number 2 economy in the world who wants to be number 1. So this global conflict is not going away. It's not ending overnight. I said this when we went into Iran too. There's a reason Trump was trying to normalize, Korea, like talking about the Korean War, talking about the Vietnam War, talking about World War II. This is not a short, operation. Once you go into the goals here are much bigger than go get the nuclear, yeah, exactly. This is a much bigger structural move via China. There's a proxy war and buckle up. Those are inflationary, not just for oil and commodities, but global trade and supply chains across the board.
One last question for you before we let you go. You talked about skew and some of the second order Greeks. We talk about backwardation, Contango all the time. Just for a visibility standpoint, like if all futures are in backwardation, that opens up the possibility for larger downside moves in the S&P. Crude oil has like a 15-point backwardation right now. How do you look at backwardation or Contango, and how does that drive your strategy if it does?
Yeah, I think of it a bit from 30,000 feet. It's all about, again, reflexivity and supply and demand. So if the market is short the front end and long the back end, which is why things go into backwardation, right? Because things get priced high because people are short it, and things get priced lower because people are long it, and then it also drives more and more of those trades because they're like, oh, this is high, this is low, I'll buy it, right? But the positioning ultimately drives the distribution of forward outcome. So if people are short the front end, long the back end, what does that mean? It means we're going to move a lot.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, we're going to move a lot, and the gamma's going to pay, and so it may mean revert. Because again, people own the vega, and then once it goes out of mean reversion, you can get a kind of rally back, a calming down, if you will. It's not. People think of it as these things are representations of what the market is telling you. What they don't think about is those things are also reflexively defining the outcomes themselves.
So
and I actually think that, because the positioning itself, if people are short gamma, we're going to move because if the market goes up, people have to buy.
Right.
Market goes down, people have to sell, right? And so the thought that because people think we're going to move a lot, they're priced at the front of the curve higher is how people think. People think in first order effects. But the reality is reflexivity, the positioning itself, and its effects on the actual outcome is actually way more powerful and way more predictable than the alternative. We talk about that all the time in terms of dispersion, right? Yeah. The index itself, vol, is compressed because of structural products and all kinds of things, which leads to the breakdown in correlation. And we've seen historic correlation that's changed structurally in markets. People used to think that correlation breakdown happened, which drove index vol compression, which is actually not as much the case anymore. It's really the alternative. They both matter, but the positioning is everything. This is what Soros talked about when he talked about reflexivity. This is the actual physical representation of it. Positioning is everything. If you understand how the world is positioned and what those positions look like, you can begin to now model forward distributions for outcomes much more reliably. Everybody likes to talk about the macro. That's the fun stuff. But the positioning is actually is where the rubber meets the road. If you're long something, that's supply and weight, and if you're short something, that's demand and weight, and you can actually measure it based on the positioning, how much is sitting out there. And that applies for longs and shorts and underlying assets, but even more importantly, even in these options and vol markets.
Yeah.